Welcome to another Terrific Tips for Business, or as I like to call it, Terrific Tips for Business, because you can't spell terrific without Terry, and I'm your host. And today I am so excited to have this gentleman on the call because I actually got to meet him in January in New Jersey before the whole pandemic thing started. And he really just has this passion and this purpose that just kind of oozes out of him. And so I'm excited to introduce him to you. I'm excited for you guys to be able to experience some of the really awesome things that he has to offer. And you'll find out here in just a minute why Craig is on our show. So I have Craig Baumohl with us today, and I want to introduce you to him. His life's purpose is now to create a ripple effect of change, bringing that true joy and passion into the business world. So now you know why we're friends, right? Those of you that know us know that I'm all about having this like ripple effect of impact with the people that I serve. And so we have this similarity. He notices that we do tend to spend more time on our business than any part of our lives. And so finding fulfillment in that aspect actually overflows into all of the other parts of our life. So since 2018, Craig has been working with companies in almost 20 different industries, and he started noticing some patterns. He really realized that he could pinpoint some distinctions in communication, management structures, culture creation, and acceleration that can be used to make small changes that maximize growth in every area. So some of his superpowers, and I love this terminology, superpowers, for those of you that saw some of my original podcast conversations from way back, don't go looking for them. It's okay. We talked about superpowers, and Craig has his superpowers of clarity of mission, leadership, culture and congruence, and acceleration and expansion. So please join me in welcoming Craig to the show. Craig, thanks for being here today.
What's going on, Terry? Thank you so much for having me on.
You are
I love seeing your smile. This is great. This already opens me up to where I want to go.
Awesome. Well, how can I not? I get to spend my Fridays with amazing people like you. So it just makes my whole week. Oh. I get to look forward to Friday every day for more than just it being Friday. So tell us a little bit about those superpowers.
Most people do. I hope that I'm coming through right. It's saying that the internet's not working out so well over here for some reason, but superpowers. The reason why I actually use the term is because of where we met at the seminar that we were at, the Unblinded seminar, really came through from the person who runs that organization, Sean Callaghy. And he helped me recognize from the time that I started all this, that there is a certain superpower that every person has. Everybody has that place inside themselves that is not only just unique to them, but that they can use to create an impact in the lives of everybody that they touch. And I think that's what the whole idea of superhero really comes from, is the idea that the heroic identity that a person has that they can use to help save, create, maximize the lives of the people around them. And that's what I found here. You know,
that's awesome.
So when I started all this, I started actually coaching individuals in a much different space. It came because of working with people in addiction and grief counseling for years. I was doing it, what I thought, I didn't know as coaching. I was just counseling. I was just helping. I was just there to be another voice. And it was through my own experiences. I went through years of it on my own. And when someone showed me what it meant to use these communication skills, use the ideals of leadership, not just the position of leadership, but an actual ideal and leveling up of leadership to help guide and lift up the people around them, all of a sudden it started affecting every other person. When this became a drive-in business, it started affecting every person involved in the business, whether it was the leaders or the employees or the clients or the people in their personal lives. And that's where that ripple effect understanding came from.
That is so beautiful. I love that you were aware enough and in tune enough to recognize that subtlety, that subtle shift, because it's really easy for coaching and counseling to kind of run hand in hand, and there is some overlap in them. But I think that if you're not paying attention to some of those subtleties and some of those shifts and changes that can happen, it's easy to kind of just let yourself stay inside of one label when really there's that synergy that happens between them.
Right.
Yeah.
It definitely.
So why the superpowers that you have? Like, why those ones?
So I guess it came from the work that I started to do, right? So when I actually went through the point of working on my recovery from my addiction, the one piece that was so difficult for me was communication. And it had been years that I had spent in isolation away from everybody else. Anybody that tried to help me, that tried to reach out, I was like full on against it, didn't want it, didn't need it. I knew everything I was doing. Another term you might have heard many times from Sean is knowingness. I was the epitome of knowingness. I knew it all. But really I knew nothing. And I was so detrimental to my life and even to anybody who was around me. And as I started to come through it, all of a sudden I started recognizing in people that I was working with, that I would talk to, that would come to me, I started recognizing the need for communication at a higher level, and not just external communication, not just with other people, but specifically the internal communication. The words that I would use to describe myself would affect how I worked or I related to somebody else. And the same thing would go with them. Now, of course, it's easier to see faults in other people before you see them in yourself. But that's where it was really a blessing to me, because I started working with these outreach organizations that were sending me people to work with all the time. And also I'm seeing these patterns that people would say these phrases, use these different terminologies in their language as to how they would think about or relate to other people. And all of a sudden it became how they acted to other people, or it would translate to how the people reacted to them, even if they weren't saying the words to them and they couldn't understand it. So they would get more angry about it. And I started recognizing it myself. So it was a friend of mine who was actually working for a very large international real estate company, and he had a small team in the company, and he heard about the coaching. Me and him were talking one day, and about the coaching and the different strategies I was learning and using. And he asked me to come and talk to his sales team. And I was like, okay, what's the problem? And he started telling me what the issues were. They weren't communicating. They wanted to walk out the second the day was over, right? 6 o'clock hit, they were out the door. They were barely hitting their quota. I hate that term. They were barely hitting it, if they hit it. There was always like a dissonance. There was always like a battle between either the people at the top, the leadership, the management of the team, and the team itself, or even within the team over who gets what leads and how do they approach it. And
I might have worked at a company like that before.
So I sat down with him and I said, okay, why don't we look at it like this? And I started using the same words and phrases he was using to describe his team members and the projects that he would give them. And I would change literally the names of the projects and the outcome that he was looking for and the steps that would go into the day-to-day, what the structure of the day would be like. And we would start to like go through these different changes. And he came to me 2 weeks later and he was like, you'll never believe it. And I said, what? And he said, well, all of a sudden, everybody's like coming in and they're asking each other how they can help the other one reach their goals for the month. And people are sticking around after like 6 o'clock. Some people like sticking around to like 7, 8 o'clock because they have something to finish and they don't want to leave before it's done. And clients started coming to him to tell him, I love these new strategies you started putting into place, and I'm using them in my company. And I was like, holy cow, that really works. I was like, look at that. It really works. With the knowledge that business was where you went to get your paycheck, hopefully support your family, and maybe even go on vacation once in your life. But it had nothing to do with real life. And anybody that spent more time than that in business or was really successful financially were always just stepping on the person next to them or below them just to get up. I didn't understand it. It was only for select few. Business success, financial success was only for select few. So I never understood that this so-called personal view, I was in the personal development world and I had learned my coaching style. At this point in time, I started studying under different mentors, and I got a couple of certifications, but I never saw it work. I never saw it as a place in business. And all of a sudden I was like, wow, that was really cool. This became not just helping one person, but literally I worked with one person and it became his team, the clients' businesses, the people in their personal lives. I was like, wow, this is amazing. And then one day someone said, you have to bring your coaching to businesses. I said, no, it doesn't really work like that. And honestly, that's when I started studying. And I found emotional intelligence. I mean, I studied all these different modalities, the ones that so many people hear about out there, the neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, and IFS, all the ones that help people with past traumas and acute situations and trying to get past, like I said, I'm dealing with addiction and grief counseling. And I'm looking at emotional intelligence and I'm, wow, this sounds like it might actually help people in all areas of life. And then I started testing it. And that's where I found, like you said, that superpower, the ability to hear certain distinctions in people's language, very simple things that when shifted, and people don't even necessarily realize sometimes that you even shifted it, they'll just come to you like a week later and be like, oh my God, everything changed. And it's just these tiny little movements. I think you and I spoke about changing people's titles in a company.
Yeah.
And when I realized I was able to do this with industries I'd never had any connection with, I don't know anything about, I have no experience in them, I realized it didn't have anything to do with that. It had to do with how closely can you listen to the emotional transference that a person has. And when they do that, again, within themselves, that's immediately how it's going to come across the people around them. And when you can find that and find those distinctions, you're able to just literally flip everything over.
Yeah. That's amazing. That's such an amazing story to listen to the success and see the ripple actually happen. That must have been very rewarding to see that happen. And to be able to recognize that this is something that you actually can duplicate and you can do it over and over again with a variety of different businesses and see similar ripples happen. That's very cool. Do you have any tips or tools for helping small business owners to become more in tune with that emotional transference you were referring to?
So I think it comes from, I guess, understanding the ideas that people have. We all understand the need for leadership. We all understand the words that people use: leadership, culture, management structure, or management styles. We learn about these. We learn these words, but people don't necessarily look at what the point of it is. So if you start with if you start with culture, right? Culture is a very broad term. There's there's
Yeah, it
there's
is.
not really any way to describe it that it fits exactly into any one scenario. But if you look at where it comes from, right? A country is built by culture through shared beliefs and values, right? A community can be built and thrive on shared beliefs and values. When it comes to a company, it should be built on shared beliefs and values.
Mhm.
But a lot of times it's built on a purpose or a mission that is in one person's head, that person then just says, go do this and this and this to fulfill your obligation to me, not to the culture and not to the mission. So one place to start for anybody is recognizing that every business, every company, every organization, you all have a mission that you want to create or impact the outside world you're with. Whether you have a business where you're selling products or a service, there is some way, some reason why you believe that the people you are selling it to are going to be better off with what you have than without it. And if that's true, then through that ideal, then you want to give that understanding to people that work for you.
Mhm.
And when the people who work for you recognize that mission, and then maybe even sit back and look at what their mission is, which sometimes people only have that mission, only have the purpose of getting up and going to work because they're just trying to get a paycheck. And in that case, they're going to be miserable. There's going to be dissonance. There's definitely going to be people just, like they call it in the financial world, the pikers, literally walking out at the bell, like not willing to put forth any of the extra effort to help grow. Then any small business owner is going to be sort of left there holding the bag.
Mhm.
So if you build the hiring or you build the outlook of the people in the organization around the mission of what you're looking for, and you look at them and you get them to look deeper as to why they want to make their money, why do they want their paycheck, what is the value of that to them in the end of it all. They don't just want pieces of paper with dead presidents on them. It doesn't matter, you know. They want something that is going to give them some sort of certainty, some sort of fulfillment, some protection for their family, whatever it is. But if there's a way to connect what you're trying to create with your business in the world and with what they want to see in the world or what they want to give to the world, then they will do anything to make your mission happen. And that's what culture that's what culture is going to really be strengthened on, is that shared belief and value. So that's definitely a start. The other is leadership. Leadership is seen as a position, right? It's seen as a place. John C. Maxwell talks about 5 levels of leadership, which is probably one of like my favorite structures to define leadership. Do you know it?
I'm familiar with it. I've followed John Maxwell for years, and actually my business coach is a John Maxwell coach. So
Oh,
I'm pretty familiar with that structure. Yeah.
yeah. So and to me, it's almost perfect because it's understood that you get there and you're just in this position because you were named as a leader, or you named yourself as a leader. You started a company, so you're now the leader.
Right. Right.
I know most successful business owners that I know are not the leaders of their company. They have other people leading the company, right? Most of them, they stay as owners, but the CEO starts taking over, or the people, the managers start taking over. Somebody one time said to me, he says, Jeff Bezos is not looking in on R&D, and every time they're supposed to reach a a timeline that they're supposed to give their projects, their finished projects in. He's not checking in to make sure that they finish their project. He's looking 3 years down the line, 6 years, 10 years down the line to figure out what can be done then. And what's going on in the company is somebody else's problem, not his.
Yeah.
You know? And that's what I think that people have to recognize, that leadership is not just a position. Is as soon as you have the mindset where you walk into work and you care for the person next to you, you've taken on a leadership role, right? Simon Sinek uses a great term. He said, being a leader is not being on top of the people you're in charge of. It's taking care of those in your charge.
I've heard him say that,
and
as
I think
well.
that's
a great line.
I love it, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what, again, between those two pieces for any business owner, focus on those two, and you're already probably at least 95% higher up and further ahead than anybody else in your space.
That's such great advice. And in coming from my own experience, I've learned that if I am too into the day-to-day and I'm too hands-on with the projects, my mindset, my mentality goes from business owner who's partnering with my client to employee of my client. And once it sinks into that, it feels like a lower energy level, feels like a lower vibration. And it causes me to sink into a depression. And then I have a hard time coming up with new ideas. I feel stuck and I feel frustrated, or like there must be more, but I don't know what it is. But every time I take a step back and say, this project needs to be done, I don't have to do it. Somebody else can do it. Now I'm able to get out of that day-to-day role and look above and say, okay, where are we going? What's the next series of things that we're going to accomplish? And in what time frame are we looking to try and accomplish those? And what sort of things do I need to put in motion now to make that possible? Where is my time needed? The day-to-day isn't where it is needed anymore. And it's really cool to be able to see that, because what I even saw in myself was my energy shifted. Like I lit up about thinking about the future and the cool things that I get to do. And then you get all of this invigoration and excitement for the work that you're doing, because now you're not doing the day-to-day anymore. You're having that impact that you originally set out to do as a small business owner. So we all start small business because we want to do something. We're really good at something. But when we get too stuck in the day-to-day, we just end up owning our own job, and then we're not actually having that impact that we ever set out to have. We have to get out of the day-to-day to have that greater impact and that greater purpose.
And it becomes energy sucking, right?
Yeah.
So I was working with a lawyer who had 5 offices or 6 offices, 5 offices at this point in time. And he was very involved with all of them. There was like 85 lawyers, and there was all of this stuff going on, and it was all international business. So you're talking about 20-hour days. Like he was just running ragged all the time. I remember the day when he turned to me and said that he was able to turn over 2 of those offices to the management of those offices. And he was able to step back and become an owner rather than an operator. The smile on his face literally almost made me cry, because as the second he got off the phone, every person that worked for him was going to become energized. Every person that worked for him was going to feel it. You know, I had a meeting with one time with a CEO and his VP. He calls me up like 3 days later. Their business was in Texas. We were in New York talking. He literally walked into the company 3 days later. They had a bunch of meetings, and they walked into the company 3 days later, and he calls me up he's like, you're never going to believe this. All of a sudden, the energy is like in the whole office is great. Is this? I said, I have a question. What did you tell everybody? He's like, we haven't talked to anybody in the office yet. I said, okay, thought about this. Said, did you have a phone call before you went back to the office? And there happened to have been one difficult person in the office who happened to be running things while they weren't there. Sort of like the de facto office manager. And this person is a very difficult person. And I said, have you had any conversations? He said, well, there was one conversation we had with him while we were gone. But after we spoke to you, there was a conversation we had with him about an interaction he had with somebody in the office. But it was a different conversation we normally have. Normally it's like trying to talk him off the ledge, talk them off the ledge. And instead it was more about, okay, let's see how we can remove them from, like, basically making him feel like he was stronger and saying, let's remove them from your problems. And let's give you a project that we know you're going to be doing amazing at. And you're going to be in your office for like 3 days just doing this one project. I said, okay, that's great. And he's like, and the whole office changed. I said, you showed up differently. You had a different conversation. It wasn't even telling anybody to act differently. It wasn't even saying anything different. It wasn't changing anything in the company. It was just you showing up differently. And as soon as he did, everybody was better. The salespeople were happier. The manager was happier. The shipping department was doing better. It was just a complete turn. That's what happens when you finally recognize that you can be working on the business instead of in the business. When you can be an owner rather than an operator. When you can be looking at what can we do now? How can we make this even greater? Then it becomes more your passion is. Yeah. And that is, it's so freeing.
And I think you hit on a really important point earlier too, talking about it's not about leadership isn't just a title. Leadership is a mindset. Leadership is a passion or a purpose greater than yourself. And to be an effective leader, you have to sometimes get out of your own way, and you have to not be like, this is my heading and I'm hiring people to fill the role so that way I can not work in the company not work in the company anymore, but work on the company. But you're hiring people who have the same passion that's going to really propel you forward. Because it is a matter of 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2. 1 + 1 = 1,000. 1 + 1 = 1,000,000. And if you have the right person in place that has that same vision of purpose or vision of mission and is willing to be on the same boat with you and willing to say, look, I know where you're trying to go and I know different ways that we can get there. Give me the reins, Captain. Let me go. Right? They're going to be excited to have that autonomy and that authority to do that. And now it's not just a title anymore. Now it's bigger than that. It's bigger than them. And it's like you said before too, you care about your team. You care about the person in the cubicle next to you in a whole different way when your job is not just you're the manager and they're subordinate. Your job is, no, you're tasked with leading this department towards this mission. This is this department's role in this mission. So your job is to lead this department to affect this mission. Do you believe in this mission or don't you? And if you don't, then you're not a good cultural fit. And so that's a really interesting way to look at how we're hiring. And I think taking the time to hire more slowly allows us to do that. A lot of times we hire too late.
For sure. We hire too late, but then they hire fast.
Yeah.
Because they're like, oh no, we have to fill this position.
We need somebody.
Need to have somebody, a warm body in this space, and I've heard people speak about this, that you get to a place where if you're in a company and you're working your job on a daily basis, and your boss is telling you or showing you in various ways that it is more important for you to look busy than be successful. And what do I mean by that? People think that, okay, if you're not at your desk for a certain amount of hours, then you aren't doing your job.
I've worked at that company.
Can you tell I have experience there also? We were next to each other. If something is not going the way that you wanted or they wanted it to, and you don't look upset about it, and you're not scared or looking nervous about it, then that means that you're not taking it seriously. Getting like heart palpitations from reminders and flashbacks.
Oh no, don't flashback. No, it's better now.
But no, I've spoken to many people who have experienced this, unfortunately. I've spoken to people inside of companies where I'll talk to people in a leadership role, and I'll speak to people below them, and I'll hear this and be like, no, like, what do you actually feel? Well, I feel like we can just handle it if we just move forward. Great. So go and do that, and people are unfortunately stuck in those mindsets, right? So when you have Gary Vee talks about hire slow, fire fast, right? And that's another thing people really go after. People and small business owners, anybody out there, remember, etch it onto the deepest parts of your brain and all over your walls, sunken cost. Never chase sunken cost. Always, if something is not going the right way, fix it, change it, and fix it. If it is not working, change it and fix it. If that means that a person does not work out there, that doesn't mean that the person is bad. That doesn't mean you're bad. Just change it and fix it. Find out how to fix it, figure out a way to go forward and move forward. You sit there and start working at it and working at it and working at it. Speaking to somebody this week who had a project going for months and they couldn't get it off the ground, and it was just destroying everything that they were working for. And they finally stopped it, and someone said to them, but we put so much work into it. And he said, this was a great line too. He said, I know a lot of people who are addicted to gambling, and they use the excuse, I just lost $5,000, to say I need to go spend another $10,000 because now that's the only way I'm going to make back that $5,000 I just lost. And that is the same thing.
Yeah.
So, it's Amazon, perfect example, was like losing $6 billion in R&D, only making $1 billion a year for like 3 years.
I didn't know that about Amazon. That's interesting. But yeah, and we do it all the time. And the idea behind it is, well, but I've already invested all of this time. So to not finish this project seems like a tragic loss. Well, but think about how much of a loss it's going to be if it takes that amount of time again, or that amount of time times 3 to get it done. How much of a tragic loss is it then? Like, yeah, you really do have to weigh the time. Time does have a value, and you have to weigh that time against the projects that you're working on. If it's not moving forward, you do have to make a change. You have to make a change, or let it go, or something. And when it comes to hiring people, I think this is relevant too, because when you're hiring somebody, you don't want to just hire the warm body. And if you do accidentally hire the warm body, it's probably a good idea to figure out what they're really good at, or like what they care about, because then you might actually find that warm body could be useful somewhere else in your organization. Just because they weren't good for the thing that you hired them for doesn't mean that they're not good at all. You might actually find that they're really good at this thing instead, and you actually have a use for that too. So why not let them go do what they're really good at and let them shine where they want to shine, and then you actually get that piece fulfilled as well. And it frees up another spot.
Right. And
Yeah.
listen, and there's so many terms out there by people who have been so successful. Ray Dalio has the idea of idea meritocracy. It doesn't make a difference where an idea came from. Ideas can come from the most unlikely people, but will be the best thing to have ever happened to your company.
Yeah.
So don't hold a person's role as their value of who they are. There's the word that I've been hearing so much of is intrapreneur, an intern that is that has an entrepreneurial mind. The idea of always being able to innovate and iterate in ways that other people might not recognize. Right? So there's always the opportunity or the possibility of finding it, and that it's possible that someone you looked at as an assistant might actually be an amazing director. Or a director might be very great at a team manager, or and you have no idea where they might fit, but if they do, then the again, the acceleration to the company becomes this exponential sort of growth.
Yeah.
Because like you said, that 1 + 1 equals a trillion.
Yeah.
It can be never stop. And that's something that people always looking at, want to win in business. That's why we hold on so dear to those projects we wanted, or that person we wanted to hire. And in reality, it's not a finite game. I did a video about this yesterday. We use the sports and war metaphors for business all the time. Mm-hmm. But in reality, that's very suboptimal, because the game of business is infinite. The game of business will never stop. And if we try to put these arbitrary rules, right? When somebody says I'm number one, right? What does that mean? Right? Do you have more sales? Do you have more market share? Did you get more money? Like, was it over 5 months, 7 months, 2 years? Like, what were the parameters of that number one spot? Like, I didn't agree to that. And sports have an agreed upon rule. You get this many points, and you have this amount of time to get above the person that you're playing against. Like, that's all games have those rules. Yeah. And business doesn't have that. So it's always about, how can I make it better? How can I become better? And again, the more successful companies, any company that's succeeded, has thought in those terms. Right? In China, for us here in the Western world, for us to have a 1-year plan or a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan, trying to get a company to put that together is like pulling teeth, literally, while they have no anesthesia, literally going in there with pliers, ripping like, you're literally like pulling it apart. And yet in China, if a company doesn't have a 100-year plan, they're not taken seriously.
Interesting. Right. And I would really love to know, because we've talked about so many amazing concepts, is there a particular tool that you would recommend for small business owners to use that can help them to start thinking about some of this, putting some of these thoughts into a formula or into a plan that's going to actually help them propel their business forward? Is there a tool you recommend?
The best tool, in my mind, is the knowledge and experience of the people that have come before you. If you want to be successful, you look at the people that have reached where you wanted to reach to, and you take their knowledge and their experience, and you cut their decades of learning experiences down to a few days of just reading and learning. And there's so many ways that you don't even have to pick up a whole book and read it anymore. You have all the apps that can give you the synopses, and you can go online and talk to people about it and hear about it. But you have books like The Culture Code, which is phenomenal, and it will tell you so much about culture. Even like the first chapter will give you an understanding of where people get stuck in hierarchical views and fears, that they always walk in wondering who's the alpha, where do I fit in here, and that creates that puts people into a pigeonhole that doesn't allow people to grow. There's again Ray Dalio and his book Principles, right, which he used to build Bridgewater Associates. Amazing book. It's a little long, but even the first couple of 100 pages is just his story, and it goes very, very quick, and just learning those life principles taken into business are phenomenal. There's just so many that I would recommend that really, and John C. Maxwell, 5 Levels of Leadership. You could buy the little reader. It's like 100 pages, and it's like this. The book is like this big and like this thick, and they're like four-page chapters. You know what I'm saying? You can go through it in a couple of days. Really, like these sort of things, and go after them. Look at the small little questions that they have to take you from one step to the next. And when you start the creatures that we are, we need to measure and monitor to feel like we're succeeding, to feel like we're growing, right? A little kid always wants to mark on the wall how tall they are. Every other day, my daughter now, every other day she wants me to mark on the wall where she is. Like, you haven't grown at all. Like, give it up. But like, that's what we need to see, that, to recognize it. But that's good. So recognize it, see where it is, and then wipe it out and say, okay, now it's time to go further. When you see yourself reaching a goal, don't say, great, I've gotten to that goal. Don't wait to get to that goal. Before you get there, when you see it's coming up, find one twice as high, and always keep looking at how you build, because it never has to stop. You never have to stop. You could be very happy. You can have all the money, all the time, and all the fulfillment in the world. And if you feel that way, then great. Then I'm so happy for you, and I wish you all the blessings in the world. Most people in business, there's something that they're missing in their money, time, and fulfillment. And if there is, then there's a way to make it better. And of course, coaches that will help you.
that can help you. Yeah. Well, that actually does lead me to that question, because we are quickly approaching a time, and I want to make sure that I respect your time and our listeners. And this conversation has been amazing, as I knew it would be, because you're just an amazing person to know. And so thank you so much for sharing so much value with me and with our listeners today. So what's the best way for everybody to get in touch with you as an amazing coach that they obviously need to know and be connected to?
So the best ways are on my website. My company's called impacttoinfluence.com is a website. But on LinkedIn, also, it's Craig Baumohl. I don't know if there's a way that they'll be able to see my name in the spelling of the name of the name of the podcast when you put it up. And you can find me on LinkedIn, and you can connect with me there. There's also a Calendly link in my profile. I have an open profile, so anybody can reach out to me at any time. And I'm always looking forward to hearing from people, hearing where they are, where they've been, where they are, and where they're going. Any things that are working in their lives, and anything that they're finding challenging in their lives. And if there's a way that I can help them with it, it really is. It's not just a passion of mine. I find it to be a privilege, because like I said, we spend so much of our time, more time on our business than anything else in the entire day. And if you find that fulfillment, if you find that joy and passion in your business, it really does spill over to every other aspect, to your relationship, to your kids, and to your just personal joy. So if I'm able to give that to somebody, that's really just an honor a privilege that I get to live with every day.
Awesome. Leading into this conversation, not to put you on the spot or anything, but leading into this conversation, you mentioned that you might have a free gift for our listeners as well. Did you want to share that?
Yes, I definitely do. And I would love to offer anybody that's listening to this podcast to just reach out to me. When you reach out to me, say where you came from it, from Spin Frogs or from Terri Watkins. Anybody that reaches out to me there, I would like to offer a free breakthrough session to. It is it's 900, it's 997 to have a breakthrough. It's almost $1,000 to have a regular session with me, but it is a free session for anybody that wants to go through, again, just simple, basic understanding of where they are and where they want to get to. And we will find at the very least one distinction that they can use to exponentially grow their business in any specific aspect that they're looking for. So I would love to gift that to everybody listening, just for the amazing pleasure I've had being here with Terri. This was my present. I got this. You guys didn't get this. So if the fact that I got this present, I got to give something back to you guys.
Thank you so much. That is such an awesome gift. And this has been my treat too. I've so enjoyed this so much. This is awesome. But thank you very much. I know our listeners will take advantage of that. And I'll make sure that the links to your website and your LinkedIn profile are accessible, so that way they can take advantage of that right when they're listening through the podcast description. That way they don't miss out on that opportunity. Craig, thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. I've really
very much. Seriously. Yes, I had a great time talking to you and spending time with you guys, and I can't wait to see everything you've done. I've been watching you also since January, and I'm so excited for you. So I can't wait to keep watching and stay in touch and hear how amazing you grow as well. So thank you for allowing me to be part of it.
Yeah, and we'll have to do this again sometime, because this is great.
Very soon.
Till next time.
Awesome.